Stay tuned. Coming up in this episode, I have a conversation with the host of the Tactical Breakdown podcast, Adam Kinakin, where we discuss the importance of situational awareness and high-risk decision-making scenarios. But first, let's pay the bills. Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com. Hello and welcome to episode 278 of the Situational Awareness Matters show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this program is to help improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-stress, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from my office in St. Paul, Minnesota, having just returned from doing consulting and training for the Louisiana Pacific Corporation and a 2-day program in Houston, Texas, specifically designed to improve situational awareness for EMS personnel. Today's feature segment is brought to you by SimsUShare. SimsUShare is a simple and affordable way to help you develop and practice situational awareness skills. You can quickly build sims from your photos to simulate almost any kind of incident, including active threat scenarios. And the new SimsUShare Command Training Center now lets you conduct multi-company drills over the internet, so you can even run drills while your companies stay in station. Check them out at SimsUShare.com. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment, part 1 of my 2-part discussion with the host of the Tactical Breakdown podcast, Adam Kinakin, where we talk about the importance of situational awareness in high-risk decision-making scenarios. Hey everyone, Rich Gassaway here from Situational Awareness Matters, and I'm with Adam Kinakin, who has a podcast called Tactical Breakdown. And we got connected on LinkedIn, and we had a long conversation about how his mission and my mission align on trying to help first responders and those in high-risk environments improve their decision making. So I asked Adam if I could be a guest on his show, and we're going to record this, kind of dual record this. And so we'll play this on both the Tactical Breakdown show and on the Situational Awareness Matters show. So Adam, thank you for having me as a guest on the show.
I can say the same thing, man. I really appreciate you having me on and reaching out, and I'm really excited to cut this interview. It should be good.
Well, let's start out.
Go ahead.
Let's start out with
you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What's the background of the Tactical Breakdown? And what was your inspiration for that? And who's your target audience? And what are you trying to accomplish with the show?
Sure. Yeah. So the whole idea for Tactical Breakdown basically came about when I took some time off from work. It was during the time of my second child after she was born, and I was at home and. I was working for a private security firm as a higher up, and I was working in a more managerial role where I was doing, reports and RFPs, RFQs, and dealing with shareholders and putting in 60-hour days. And my passion and my background has always been training and teaching and instructing. And it was like that when I was in the military and afterwards with defensive tactics training and self-defense training. So when I took this time off, I kind of had one of those come to Jesus moments, and it was, what am I doing here? Like, I'm not happy. And the one thing that does make me happy is talking and training with people in the law enforcement, military, and first responder communities. I've been really lucky in my career that I've had some amazing instructors, amazing leaders that have guided me. And I wanted to be able to take their knowledge and information and share that with everyone, because I don't know what it's like in the US, but I know it's very similar to what it is like up here in Canada, especially interagency communication when it comes to training and tactics, and whether that be law enforcement, first responder community, fire, EMS, whatever. There's a lot of organizations very insular with their training. So, one agency may come up with a training or tactic that is effective for them, but sometimes the higher ups really don't want them to share that with other agencies, because it's like, these are our toys, we don't want to share them. So when I'm dealing with instructors and trainers, and when I talk to these guys and girls, they say, I want to give this information to everyone because it's super useful to us, but I don't have any way to do it. I don't know who to talk to. And the whole idea for this program was to create a platform for them to do that. And I think where you and I kind of tied in together, not only with the first responder side of things, but the situational awareness portion. And a lot of it comes down to mental health as well, but dealing with situations and having these people, whether they be frontline officers or fire paramedics, whether they be military members who were deployed, sharing their stories and sharing the things that really struck home for them so that other people can learn from them. So hopefully that if they're ever put in those same situations, that they're able to act quicker and make smarter decisions. I hope that answers your question.
It does. It's a good mission. Now your show is newer. Is that
brand new?
Fair?
Brand new. Yeah.
Yeah. And you launched it. If somebody wanted to find it, where would they find it at? Sure.
So the website is thebreakdown.ca. So .ca because we're up here in Canada, but it's thebreakdown.ca. And you can find the podcast on any of the platforms right now. So you can get us on iTunes or Castbox or Spreaker or whatever your flavor is. You can find us on there. We have a couple episodes up right now. But as you and I discussed earlier, we got about a dozen interviews in the queue from experts all around North America. And those are going to be coming up very regularly here over the next couple weeks. And we're going to get them all out there. And then, yeah, we're going to see how it happens, see what happens.
Okay, good. Well, what components of situational awareness do you think I could be most helpful to your audience on?
Well, I mean, that's a very broad topic, right? That's the thing. It's amazing because I think situational awareness is one of those things where, I know you come from the fire EMS background, and a lot of the people that I've dealt with come from the military law enforcement background, but it's one and the same, really. So when you and I got started talking, I thought that it would be amazing to have you kind of share what it's like from your experiences, just so that everyone listening on my end can see that the commonalities are it's there, right? There's really no difference if you're a first responder showing up to a call, and it doesn't matter what uniform you're wearing.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important message to send.
Yeah, I could make one point of clarification in that while my background is as a firefighter and paramedic, a fair amount of my training is with law enforcement and military and aviation and medicine. It's not strictly down the lane of fire and EMS. In fact, the message would be valuable for anyone who works in a high risk, high consequence, time compressed environment with changing conditions. And while my career experience is in that lane from the fire and EMS, where the real, I think, gift of the contribution comes is when I went back to school and did my PhD research in cognitive neuroscience, trying to understand, what happens to us in stressed situations and how brain function changes and how our thinking changes and perhaps how behavior changes. And I think that is the value of the broader application of the topic, and including a fair amount of my customers are business and industry. In fact, I was just in Canada for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks ago, working with Syncrude oil refinery in Fort McMurray, and
Oh, yeah.
training their oil refinery operators on situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. So truly the application of the topic is broader than just my career experience would maybe let someone to believe.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And one of the things too is I find that a lot of the times, it's funny when you move to the civilian side of things, and in private industry, and you start seeing a lot of SOPs and you start seeing a lot of things that they do, and you can tell that where that came from was either police, military training and their programs and procedures, and then it gets kind of just switched to the private industry, but it originates there, right? So
yeah, well, that's true, but also in part, some of the things that we do in the first responder arena, you would think that business and industry already know about that and already do that, and they don't. In some of the things that I observe when I go and do an assessment is rather surprising for me, that what they don't know or what they're not applying that is just so second nature to what we do, that it's I don't know, sometimes stunning to think that you would have thought they already had that figured out, and they don't. And then when you make a recommendation, you're like, oh my God, that was so good. And you're like, oh my God, we've been doing that for 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I did want to talk to you about, because we discussed this, was kind of your process of going through your education, and how you got inspired to go through and learn more about the academic side of things, the neuroscience. Can you share a little bit about where that came from and how you got that started?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. For the largest part of my career, I had become a student of near misses and casualties. Early on, somebody had said to me, if you want to try to keep those who work with you and for you safest, understand how responders get hurt and killed, and then learn every lesson you can about how not to let those things happen again. Don't repeat the mistake, learn those lessons. So I immersed myself in these casualty reports, trying to glean everything that I could from them. But along the way, something started happening that I really didn't realize was happening at the time that it was, but I realized later that it was. I started to become rather jaded and cynical and hateful and accusatory of those people who were at those incidents, saying things like, how could they do something so dumb? And, how could they have somebody so incompetent in charge of that incident that would have let something like that occur? And the truth of the matter is, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was labeling those people. And in the end, as I think back about it, I think I was doing that to try to make myself feel better, because I could read a report where something went terribly wrong, and I could say, well, I know why that happened. The person who was in charge was incompetent, but I'm not. And I'd read another one and say, oh, I know why that happened. The person who was in charge was inexperienced, but I'm not. And I'd read another one and say, I know why that happened. The person in charge of that one was an idiot, but I'm not. Mm-hmm. And somehow it made me feel like I was insulated from having these things happen to me, because I could always put a label on them that I said, that doesn't apply to me, so therefore these bad things won't happen to me because I have it figured out, and they didn't. And it was foolish to be thinking that way, but I was. And then I found myself asking a question that I couldn't answer, and that really was frustrating me. And the question was not a difficult question, but I asked it so many times. And the question was, when they were working at those high risk, high consequence environments and things were going bad, how could they not see it coming? How could so many talented and experienced people not see this train wreck of an event that was unfolding in front of them? And I wanted to try to understand what was going on that they couldn't. And that's what inspired me to enroll in the PhD program. And I did my research in the neuroscience of trying to understand how we process information, how we try to make sense out of changing conditions quickly, how it drives our decision making, good and bad, how it drives our physical movement, both good and bad, and out of that uncovered some things that the first responder community had stepped up and said, that's good stuff, that's valuable to us. And that was a little over 10 years ago. And at the time I was still working and going to school full time. And then I finished school, and when I put the topic out there, I got so much interest in it that I actually ended up having to quit my fire chief's job because I couldn't meet the demand of the training and consulting. And so I had to step away from that career, and for the last 10 years have sustained myself and my family by consulting and teaching on situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. And again, for either the first responder community or for business and industry, I would have thought that they would have maybe had some of the stuff that I teach figured out, but I'm finding that they don't. In fact, it's very frustrating for them that they don't. And so what I try to do is just help them to, figure it out, to be better at making high-risk decisions that are hopefully more accurate than what some of the casualties reports would let us to believe.
Yeah. So I know it's hard to narrow down because there's so many things that I'm sure you speak to, but if you had to pick one or two of the major points that kind of get brought up and are the key things that you speak to when you go in and speak with either agencies, individuals, or companies, what are those situational awareness points that you find are always lacking?
Well, the main point is, if somebody contacts me and says, we want to have a class because we think situational awareness is important, and we're not doing real well in that arena, and I say, well, how do you define situational awareness? And that's where the conversation gets very quiet very quickly, because it's a term that people toss around a lot, but they don't really know what it means. They don't know how to develop it. They don't know how it goes sideways. They don't know how to correct it if it goes sideways. And it's one of those terms that it gets thrown around a lot as a buzzword. Even people in the military who are in my programs, they'll say things to me like, oh man, they're preaching situational awareness all the time, every exercise, everything we do, it's situational awareness. And I'll say, what does situational awareness mean? And they're like,
yeah.
And they look at me like, well, it means pay attention, keep your head on a swivel. And I'm like, oh, that's just such a small component of it. So what I find is pretty much, no matter who I'm dealing with, they struggle to understand what it is. I think it's weird because they know it's important, but they don't know how to put a frame around it. And what they don't understand because of that is they don't understand the ways that situational awareness get impacted in their work environment. So when I'm working with first responders, fire, EMS, police, dispatch, emergency management, I know that business. I mean, I've never been a police officer, but I know the business of street level type decision making in the public employment arena. So I don't have to go into an organization and say, well, into a public safety organization and say, I need to do an assessment to really see what the problem is. But when I go to business or industry, I really have to go there and immerse myself in what they do to really see what the situational awareness problems are in their work environment. Like when I mentioned I was at Syncrude, that all started, I've been training there now for 2 years, and it all started 2 years ago when they contacted me and said, hey, we think your program might have some value to us. And I said, well, what I'd like to do is come up and do an immersion with the process operators to see what they do and how they do it, and interview them and look at your accident reports and really see what the true situational awareness related issues are. And what I find is in industry, there is some commonality, but there are some things that are very unique to their work environment that might not be present in the next work environment. So I try not to give them some generic packaged program, because then some of their employees might say, well, that doesn't apply to us. We're not in that kind of an environment. So when I do the immersion, then I can customize it so that when I'm speaking to the employees of that company, I use very specific examples of things that have happened there, accidents that have happened, people that I've interviewed, what people have said to me about how their awareness is impacted under certain circumstances or conditions, and then customize the content to fit their need. Because in the end, I want the training to be valuable for them, but I also want it to be able to help them to have a developed skill set that allows them to think through their high risk decision environments differently than what they have previously.
That makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that I've always noticed is when people bring up critical incidents, the situational awareness and critical incidents almost go hand in hand. And it sounds to me like you draw from both sides of the coin there, where you're talking to corporations and you're talking about workplace incidents and accidents that can happen. Whereas on the other side with the first responders, law enforcement, the situations are two totally different. But the one thing that always is going to remain the same is going to be the person, right? Us all being human beings. And I think that's where I was really interested to hear more from you about, was because from my experience, when I think of situational awareness and critical incidents, critical incident debriefs, you talk about both psychological and physiological responses during these types of situations. So can we dive a little bit farther into that? I mean, I know there's a lot of people that understand now, not so much 10, 15 years ago, but now starting to understand that, stress is a very real thing and it can affect everybody completely differently. And when they're in these situations, you may go through a whole situation and you don't remember a thing, or you may remember every single detail, and from individual to individual, it's going to be completely different. So can we go into that a little bit? Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, stress is the game changer. There's no doubt about that. The biological, chemical, physical changes of the brain under stressful conditions are measurable and significant. With the creation of fMRI technology, functional magnetic resonance imaging, it's very easy now for researchers to literally see changes in brain function as a result of stress, as much stress as they can induce on somebody during an MRI, and see how the brain function changes. They can do blood work to see how chemical changes are occurring and the effects of those chemical changes. And there's a whole concoction of chemicals that get released when somebody's having a stress event. I think many people are familiar with adrenaline, which is actually released from the adrenal glands, which are attached to the kidneys. But the message to release the adrenaline actually is triggered from the brain, which then the adrenaline is released to give us energy to be able to perform, and the brain does it on the notion that we're under we're in stress, but we're in risk. And the brain says, release the adrenaline to give us the energy to get us out of our risky situation, which then is connected to fight or flight. And other chemicals get released as well. For example, endorphins, which is a neurotransmitter. Endorphins are, the term endorphin is a connection of two words to make one. And I'm sure there's some technical term for what two words get combined like that, which I don't know. So I'll look real dumb when I say that. But endorphins are endogenous morphine. So endogenous means morphine generated from outside the cellular level. And the morphine is a painkiller. So in a high-risk situation, a person literally could be hurt but not feel any pain because the morphine is, the naturally produced morphine is masking the pain. And it's all done around the context of helping us survive in high-risk environments, because the brain knows in a high-risk environment, you're likely to be hurt while you're doing whatever you're doing in your high-risk environment. And therefore, the endorphins might mask the pain to allow you to continue to perform or to save yourself. But morphine then also has other, side effects. It's a stimulant, so it's going to increase heart rate and respirations and blood pressure and contribute to sweating. And so there's, I guess, for every good, there's maybe some potential challenge. You might feel the heart kind of palpitating. That's a combination of the morphine and the adrenaline. And so this concoction of chemicals designed to aid us in our survival driven decision making is all with good intention. One thing that happens that I think that the listeners should be aware of is that we have two sides of our brain. We have the left brain, right brain. We get that little ridgy thing that kind of goes up the middle, separates the two. The left brain is predominantly, we use both sides of our brain. So if somebody says, I'm a left brain person, no, you're a whole brain person. You just might more affiliate with left brain. But left brain is more critical thinking, analysis. Right brain is more creative and intuitive. And under high stress situations, the analytical left brain will struggle. The kind of things that we could sit in a classroom and ace an exam because there's no stress other than the stress of the exam. When we get in the field, we literally might have amnesia to some of those things that we can prove. I knew it. Look, I got a A on the exam. I got a 98% on my exam. And then they get in the field and under stress, they can't remember some of that, or especially if it requires, analytical thinking, they'll struggle to do that analysis because left brain struggles in high stress situations. And the advantage is that the right brain kicks in, and the right brain being creative, problem solving, intuitive driven thinking dominates. And that's probably to our advantage. Well, it is to our advantage in high risk situations because left brain thinking is slow and right brain thinking is fast. And in some of these situations that we're in, it requires pretty fast decision making. We can't form a committee and figure out what we're going to do in some of the problems that we deal with. So the right brain's ability to tap into past experiences, instinct, intuition, and drive decisions and actions gives us the ability to be quick, nimble, action-oriented people. The downside of that is that we can act pretty quick without doing a lot of thinking and analysis of what we're doing. So, one of our hopes is that when we do this quick thinking and decisions, that we get it right, because we got to do it quick, and we probably only have one chance to get it right. So we want to make sure that it is nimble and accurate. and that can present a challenge.
So two major things on that for me. One is, and for the sake of the shows here, what we'll do is there is a ton of literature out there and a ton of information when we're talking about SNS and PNS, so your sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous systems, what happens during activation when you get that epinephrine, norepinephrine dumps, what your body does physiologically, and all that kind of stuff, which I think is super important for everybody, especially in the first responder community, military communities, to know if they don't know already. And there's some amazing resources out there. Obviously On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, and different publications out there have a lot of information about that. So I think what I'll do is, especially on my side, and you can as well, we can put some links on there for everybody who's listening to access that information. But
Yep.
One of the things that really stuck out to me when you were talking about that was, how do we, when we're talking about training and teaching and showing people how to, this is what's going to happen, so how do we respond to it? And I know from my military background, and anybody in the military will say this, is there's a reason why we do the type of training that we do, and it's repetition, and it's over and over and over again, because like you said, under stress, you're not going to be able to draw from that type of thinking where I can cycle through and make conscious decisions on what's going to happen. My body's basically going to go to what it thinks is going to keep me alive or get me to the next level. So can we talk a little bit about how you integrate that into training and sharing that with organizations so that they can start developing their training systems to battle this physiological and psychological response that everybody has?
Yeah. So one of the challenges that I see when it comes to how we do our training, and as I talk about this, I could perhaps put myself as the poster child of the person who did it wrong, but didn't know any better about the fact that I was doing it wrong. As I was training first responders, we would create a script for the training event, and then we would take them through the training event beginning to end, and then have them repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And without even realizing, and it's going to sound odd and maybe even a little embarrassing for me, without even realizing that what we were doing was not realistic. I mean, we thought it was, but it wasn't. And I'll give you a police example that this story came from somebody that was in one of my programs, who we were talking about the importance of repetition in building scripts of knowledge that we can draw on for automatic performance. And in the middle of this conversation, this officer shares this story about a video that he had seen. Now, I've looked for this video and I cannot find it, and I wish I could, because I would love to be able to incorporate it and share it, but it's out there somewhere, because I don't think he'd had any reason to embellish the truth when he was telling the story in the class. But this Quick Mart is being robbed, and as they're being robbed, a marked police car pulls up to the Quick Mart, and the person who's robbing the Quick Mart sees the officers pull up, and he doesn't want to get into a confrontation with the police officers, so he goes to the back of the store and hides. And the two officers come into the store and they split up, and one of them goes over to where like the coffee area is, and the other one goes back in the store to like the back where maybe the sodas are. And as the one goes to the back of the store, he rounds the turn on the from the shelves, and he rounds a turn, and the robber takes a gun and he points the gun at the police officer, and the officer raises his hands up. And the officer, and I, and again, because I'm not trained as a police officer, I might not use the right terminology, and you can correct me if we need to, but I think people get the gist of it. The officer's been trained in defensive tactics. He knows what to do. He's been taught how to disarm somebody. And the officer just does a maneuver like, whoa, and just literally pulls the gun right out of the guy's hand. And the robber is like stunned that all of a sudden now he's unarmed. I mean, the officer, truly, you know that you can react quicker than somebody's reaction time, and that's what the officer did. Is he reacted quicker than the person could counter react, and literally just pulled the gun right out of the guy's hand. And then the bad guy put his hands up, and then the officer handed him his gun back.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And put his hands up. The officer put his hands up again, as if to say, you didn't shoot me this time, but I'm going to give you a do-over to try again. And in the meantime, the clerk had alerted the other officer about the robber in the store, and the other officer was going down an aisle behind the robber. And at that time, the gun had been handed back, and the second officer, he could have shot him, but he didn't shoot him. He just nailed him and tackled him and took him down. And so then they arrested him, and they got the video surveillance camera footage, and that's what this guy was telling me that he saw from the Quick Mart, where it showed this officer exchanging this gun back and forth. Mm-hmm. And all the fellow officers couldn't understand why that officer would do something seemingly so dumb. And what it tied back to was the training. When they were doing the training and they do that quick maneuver to take the gun away, it was two officers doing this training, and he'd take the gun away, and then maybe the instructor would say, okay, that was pretty good, but let me give you some coaching on technique. Let's do it again. He'd hand the gun back, and they would do the training again, do the exercise again, take the gun away, hand it back, take the gun away, hand it back. Well, all the while, seemingly as innocent as it would appear, he's developing a script of muscle memory that under stress can become an automatic performance without really conscious thinking. And in that real event, he took that gun off that assailant, and that subconscious script of, in this case, muscle memory said, give the gun back and let's do this again. And that's exactly what he did, which is perhaps the least desirable thing to be done. And the truth of the matter is that that exercise should not end when the gun has been taken away from the robber. The exercise should continue. That would include then, and again, sorry if I get the term wrong, a takedown and a handcuffing, and to secure the person. But they stopped the exercise at just the taking the gun away, and then they would give it back and do it again, instead of seeing that evolution all the way through to the end. And this shortcutting of the evolution is what we do a lot in the fire and EMS world, and we do it because in the sake of expediency, we perceive that we don't have time to do a full evolution, so we just do pieces and parts. And as we do pieces and parts, our brain is learning pieces and parts. And what we further assume is, well, in the end, it's logical that we would just say, now put that all together, and somehow in our mind that all these pieces and parts are just going to fall in alignment, and we're just automatically going to know what to do. And when we have our calm, non-stressed brain working, we go, well, yeah, no, duh, that I would know to do that. I would know to then, do the takedown and the handcuff. It's so logical. It is logical, but it's left brain logical. And then comes under stress, old right brain that says, do it just like you were trained to do it. And there you find yourself doing it just like you've been trained to do it. And as I look at these casualty reports where these responders do what seems to be inappropriate, some might call dumb things. I don't think any responder does something dumb. They might be ignorant about what the right thing is to do, but I don't think they're out there trying to do things dumb or to be a stupid person or anything like that. But as they do things that don't appear to be best practice, somebody will line up and say, what in the world were they thinking when they did that? And maybe they weren't thinking. Maybe what they were doing was literally automatic. No thought required. It's a script. It's a script that is probably well rehearsed, and, just waiting there to be called up. And as soon as that script gets called up, the script gets played, and then something bad happens. And so what I do sometimes is when I work with an organization is I go back and I look at how they train. Because when I see something happen in the real world that doesn't seem to be smart, I wonder, well, where did they learn to do it that way? Mm-hmm. Did they learn to do it that way? And if they did, how was it that somebody taught them to do exactly what we wouldn't want them to do? You wouldn't want an officer who takes a gun off somebody to turn around and give it back to him. So then all his peers look at him and say, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. Why would you do that? And he can't even explain why he did it. He doesn't know why he did it. But then when you back up and you look at the training, you literally see that. Now, let me give you one more thing, and then I'll quiet and we can have more conversation. So I was teaching that concept. I used that example with firefighters, and I was at a public safety academy building in Pennsylvania. So it's a building where they hold police training, fire training, EMS training, like a whole big complex. So I had fire and EMS in this session, and I'm explaining this to them. We take a break. I said, okay, it's time for a break. We take a break, and as I'm walking up the hall, there is a door to a classroom, and the door is closed, but there's a kind of a long rectangular window in the door that's about 6 inches wide and 3 feet high. And so I peer in there to see what's happening in that room. Guess what they're doing? They're doing exactly the evolution that I had just talked about. Disarming somebody and then giving the weapon back and trying it again. Or they give the weapon back and another person comes and tries it. But either way, they disarm somebody and handed the weapon back. And I so much wanted to tell the people in my class, hey, y'all gather around. here's the poster child event. I didn't, though, because I didn't want to embarrass the instructor or the students that were in that class. But I was stunned to see the very thing that I was talking about being done right there. And there might be some out there that would say, well, we would never train that way. We would do the full takedown and handcuff, and God bless you if you do. There's, good. But there are some that don't. And the instructors have the best of intention, as I did. I had the best of intentions. But what I realized is I was shortcutting a lot of the scripting, or I was piecemealing the scripting with the belief that that smart responder will be able to somehow in their brain find all the appropriate scripts and appropriately align them and do all the appropriate things all in less than 5 seconds or 10 seconds. And at the time that I was doing it that way, I didn't understand what I understand now. So it seemed logical. And now, to me, it seems crazy.
The Situational Awareness Matters show was launched in 2014 with a purpose: to give a platform to those who've had near-miss events to share their stories. When I'm on the road delivering classes on situational awareness, I often hear attendees talk about near-miss events that they've had, and they've shared some amazing stories. These stories motivated me to launch this podcast so that those lessons could be shared with a bigger audience, you. The Situational Awareness Matters show, podcasted as SA Matters Radio, and our companion video program, SA Matters TV, on YouTube, along with other videos that we've posted there, have enjoyed over 800,000 downloads. I'm so thankful for your support. I feel so honored to be able to provide the platform for these amazing stories to be shared. If you like the show, please do me a solid favor. Please subscribe. For the audio version of the show, search SA Matters Radio on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, or iHeartRadio. For the video version, subscribe to SA Matters TV on YouTube. And if you find the show valuable, I would really appreciate it if you would give the show a rating and write a review. Your ratings and reviews help others to find the show. But more importantly, your feedback inspires me to want to work harder for you. Since 2007, Situational Awareness Matters instructors have helped more than 1,300 organizations and have trained more than 80,000 individuals on improving high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, public transportation operators, aviation workers, oil refinery process operators, and more. If you or someone you know works in a high-risk, high-consequence, decision-making environment, then we're here to help improve your safety and your survival, and to help you accomplish the most important goal of all, and that's to go home to the ones who love you. I'd like to take a moment to honor and thank the companies, organizations, agencies, and departments that have hosted recent Situational Awareness Matters training for their team members. The National Volunteer Fire Council Summit, the National Fire Protection Association Conference, the Itasca County Emergency Communications Center, the Odessa, Texas Fire Department, the Louisiana Pacific Corporation, the Southeast Texas Regional Advisory Council EMS Committee Training Seminar. If you're interested in attending one of our upcoming events, here's the schedule. On July 24 and 25, I'll be at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. On July 26th at the North Metro Fire District in Broomfield, Colorado. On July 31 at the Evans Fire District in Evans, Colorado. On August 8 and 9 at Fire Rescue International in Atlanta, Georgia. On August 12th at the Itasca County 911 Emergency Center in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. August 17th at the Ingham County Fire Chiefs Association in Michigan. August 21 and 22 at the Coastal Bend Regional Advisory Council EMS Committee Training Seminar in Corpus Christi, Texas. And August 27 through 29 at the Voluntary Protection Program's Participants Association's National Conference in New Orleans, Louisiana. If you want to see the locations of all the upcoming events, just head over to the samatters.com website, and the schedule is under the Training Programs tab on the top of the homepage. If you're interested in hosting a program, just click the Contact Us tab on the top of the SA Matters homepage, and I'll give you a call. If you want to become part of the SA Matters community of learners, there's several ways you can do that. Check the show notes for how to get connected with us by signing up for our monthly newsletter, subscribing to the SA Matters radio podcast, subscribing to the SA Matters TV YouTube channel, and how to follow us on the social media channels of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 278 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you to my guest, Adam Kinakin, host of the Tactical Breakdown podcast show. Thank you to our platinum sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to our feature segment sponsor, SimsUShare. And thank you to our associate sponsor, Chief Miller. Thank you to all the companies, agencies, organizations, and associations that have hosted Situational Awareness Matters training programs. Thank you to the organizations that have hosted live stream training programs, where I come to your organization live via the internet to train your members. Thank you to the more than 3,000 students and graduates of the highly acclaimed Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. The feedback I receive from Academy graduates is just amazing and humbling. Thank you for that. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.